Welcome back to another Boomer Bust editorial. I'm your host Terry, and today talking about how to fix the NCAA. So amateurism and NCAA, paying athletes, all that good stuff is a conversation I had before. I'll put that link in the description if you want to go check that out more philosophically, why I feel what I feel. But, more so than that, we're talking practically, how would I go about fixing the NCAA? And it's pretty simple. And I might have mentioned this in the other editorial, but really what it comes down to is that people want to make money and have power. They don't really, that's nothing new. That's the story of the country, mostly the story of the world. And if they don't want to let go of that money and power, then the NCAA is going to continue to have the problems that it does. So what do I propose to be the fix? Number one, the first thing you have to do to fix the NCAA is change the way that money comes into the school. Now, every school isn't the same, especially when you go from, D1 to D2, D3, very different regulations. And then, of course, when you go from public schools to private schools, and then every school kind of runs the same. But for the most part, the schools we think of when we thinking of big money sports, they run it the same way, where that money for that team goes to that team. And so all the revenue generated by football goes to football. And so the thing that I would say is that you need to change that to make it a blanket system where the money or the revenue, I should say, for sports goes to the president. And so, fortunately for me, I guess, I'm back in school now, and I'm actually, studying in my master's program in the higher ed administration. And so learning more about how and seeing more how it works, just at my particular alma mater, but just hearing different ways schools do things. And it's always a fight for money. It's not like, the president of the university gets this big pot of money and says, okay, you get to have this, you get to have that. No, it's I wouldn't say a free for all, but almost, where you got all these divisions of the same place doing different things to get their own type of budget. Fundraising, in this type of way, or, trying to get grants in this type of way, or get alumni to give them money in this type of way. And so the thing is that a lot of times there's no central place where money is pooled. And that just sports, that goes to academics and anything else. And so I think that for sports, at least, you could dedicate an office with the president or whoever, the chancellor, whoever's in charge of the school, where they allocate that money throughout the sports and the school. And that's probably the biggest thing, because at the end of the day, we can talk about amateurism, but really people are upset because there's so much money being made off these students that is disproportional to what they're getting. And the optics of it makes it seem like, okay, education doesn't matter. And I don't like that. I really hate that part. And so a big thing for me is that we got to remind people that these students are getting a lot. But when you put it up against the billions being racked in every year, then it's kind of hard to argue. So we got to allocate it differently. And so there's already NCAA, there's a ton of Title IX NCAA rules. People don't know how deep these rules go, where you have to have a certain amount here for for each team. Each team's got to have a certain budget, blah, blah, blah. Everything's very detailed. It's not loosey-goosey as people think. Some schools just don't regulate themselves as hard as they should or could. But there are the rules there. But even with that still being said, if you can get everything, spread out through everybody where they're being funded, all that extra money still goes to that football team. And so I would propose, again, a blanket reform where the money is funneled up into the school's administration, and then redisperse not only throughout sports, but throughout the school as well. Because it is big profits. I understand that money can be used, but school shouldn't be a business. And that's on the sports side and the academic side. It shouldn't be ran like a corporation. And the issue is the more profits you get, the more corporate like you become. And so if we remove the profits from those sports hands, then we can start changing the conversation. Hey, if you're a coach and you say, I want to make $30 million, well, you might have to go to the NFL, because now NCAA and college football or college sports is no longer the place to do that. We flattened it out and we regulated it out. Most of the money you bring in is going to go to the school, because you play for the school. You can't have a place to play, show your talents, and get drafted if the school doesn't exist. And so in the schools educating you, especially in terms of football, you have to be educated for at least 3 years. And so if you're at that school for 3 years, they're the ones mostly giving you your education. So I would just say push all the money to, maybe you got to create a whole new branch and a whole new position or whatever. But I would say that's the route I would go, because then once we're saying, yes, they're making money, but this money is now benefiting the school at large and not just benefiting the football program, then we can have a conversation. Because you get schools like Aaron Donald's perfect example. Love Aaron Donald. I'm so happy he donated to Pitt. It was like 7 figures. He donated to the football team. And so look, these places have amazing facilities, amazing donors, amazing alumni, all these great things. They make all this money with TV deals, and then they turn around and get the big time football players giving them money on top of that. And so it's just like that type of stuff to me is a no brainer. That should have went to the school and let them allocate it, because again, if the school goes down at UAB, not the school, but that was a football program. But if the school goes down, then the football program has nowhere to live. And so I don't know. That's me personally. That's just might because I'm on the education side. But even from the money and the optics side, that's the biggest crux that people have an issue with, is that this idea that there's so much more money being made compared to what students are given. Because look, if there was no TV deals and whatnot, and school and football teams pulled in $100,000 a year, there wouldn't be a whole bunch of people arguing about the amateurism and the value of education, or arguing against it, excuse me, because they would be like, yeah, we understand they're getting some comparable, and that value of education is important and comparable to what the school's getting from them. But the problem is the school's getting so much, or the team is getting so much money, versus that college education, that's nothing of an expense. So that's my number one thing. And then number two, which I have come around on, and I'm still wrestling with it, but I'm kind of leaning towards now, let players, capitalize on their likeness. And so I would only do this in conjunction with the first thing, because you're going to have players get distracted and whatnot, but let players capitalize on their likeness. So if they're able within their schedule to do a car deal or a radio show or promote, this or that, then let them get paid for it. A game, let them get paid for it. Or a video game, let them get paid for it, whatever. And the reason I like the likeness thing, and someone brought this up earlier, is that, or someone that I was listening to, but they basically were talking about, okay, so one of the big issues with paying players is like, who gets paid? How do we choose how much to pay this person? And that's why I don't think the school, anybody should be paying them outside of scholarships. Not at all. No way. But if you're talking about entrepreneur and like getting your own money, then the market settles that. That's capitalism. And so it doesn't matter what sport you play. It doesn't matter if you're the fifth string or the starter. If you get what the market is willing to pay you. The problem is when people want to put that responsibility on the school, then they have to figure out some type of system that's fair. The market is its own, beast, and I would rather throw it out over to them. Now, I think that regulates the fairness of it. Look, if you if you're a backup volleyball player and for some reason somebody wants to give you a huge deal to do a radio thing, then hey, no one's stopping you. And so I like that part. The only issue is, of course, players being tempted to then involve themselves more with the business side than they are with the sports. But then they have to stay good at sports to be marketable. And then I just think with the rigid schedule you have, you should be okay. Now, you can't start adding team rules. Nobody can do this or that. No, you give them the schedule like you have been. And if they got time outside of that to do stuff, then let them do it. Now, again, I would only do that if you implement the first rule, because now you're hitting both problems. Now, you're not got this lopsided disparity of income going to the team and the players aren't getting anything. And you got players having the ability to go out and get their own market, because the issue is if you continue to let the teams rake in all this money and you let players capitalize on their likeness, it's going to be a competition. And so then it's going to be like Nick Saban's making $30 million. And yeah, I'm going to push as hard as I can to make the most money I can, because that's how people are. It's keeping up with the Joneses. It's comparing yourself amongst each other. But if you remove that temptation, you remove that and you say, hey, you want to learn some business savvy? Still, you can't have an agent, but if you want to do your own outside thing and make a little bit of bucks, okay, cool. But you still gotta play by the rules and be at practice and all that good stuff. So that's kind of how I would approach it. And I think that clears up a lot of issues with merchandising and franchising and all that stuff. I think that clears up a lot of issues people have with coaches, like using and abusing schools. And you have a lot of Title IX issues and a lot of people saying that's not fair with different sports. I think you clear all that up with those two solutions. So anyway, go down comment section. Let me know what you think about that. Do you think those two would work? Do you like one or the other? Do you have your own solutions? Share it around, get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for listening.